Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday evening space show program, and it's good to be back on the air after our pause for conferences on the East Coast, AIAA, ISDC, and my 80th birthday party over the weekend. But we're back with a full schedule for space show programs. You can check the newsletters and the website and the upcoming show menu to see who's on, and including who's on this week for Hotel Mars. Uh, Tonight we have Rick Fisher back with us, and Rick was recently on Hotel Mars, which is only about an 18-minute discussion, and he said some things that I found really fascinating, most interesting. So I asked him back for a full program on the space show tonight to discuss some of what we talked about more briefly on Hotel Mars last week. And Rick is national security consultant, mostly with China and Asia, and really knows the space industry and what's going on with space in that part of the world, as well as what's going on with space in our part of the world. So we're happy to have Rick with us. So Rick, as I told you before we started, this is John Hunt. He's our physics guy for the most part, Fort Worth, Texas. Dr. Kathari is in Maryland, and he's an aerospace engineer. He's got interest in academics in the nuclear world, and he's originally from India, so he is very up on what goes on in that part of the world too. And I'm going to lead off, Rick, with pretty much what I asked you before the show started and what I was thinking about during Hotel Mars last week. And that is, with all of what is going on with China in our policy, our concerns with Taiwan, with the South China Seas, with the inroads they make in South America, with spreading their Chinese policy and their lunar program. Also Africa, by the way, with Belt and Road, and their military prowess, including what they may or may not be doing with Ukraine, with Russia, and what they may or may not be doing with Iran. I'm not clear about any of that. What is the intersection, or is there an intersection in our security interest regarding space? Is it sort of trivial compared to all these issues that I just mentioned? Is it a big component of these issues like Taiwan and the South China Seas and such? Do we really care if they beat us to the moon? Do we really care about their own competitive lunar program to Artemis? Uh, so how do you see the intersection of space to all of our policy concerns with China?
Well, David, look, thanks once again for having me back on the space show. I certainly enjoy your questions, trying to get to some understanding, especially about China's goals and activities, and also addressing the questions of your audience. That's a privilege and an honor. But to answer your question, uh, increasingly over the last 20 years, space has become a major on the way to becoming a determinant part of the American global national security consideration. And along with our progression further out into space to determine our own security, so has gone the People's Republic of China, to the point that when space becomes the primary determinant, activities in space, positioning in space, occupation of whatever in space becomes the primary determinant of our national security on Earth, the Chinese will be there. The Chinese will be our either our major antagonist or our major cooperative partner. Um, as long as the Chinese Communist Party is in power, that relationship is not bound to be as cooperative as we would like, but will tend toward antagonism, especially when antagonism or warfare prevails on Earth. So, yes, if there is a Chinese Communist Party war to destroy the democracy on Taiwan, that will have immediate ramifications in space. There will be warfare in low Earth orbit. Uh, uh, Chinese and likely American combat satellites will be shooting it out. Uh, there could be large scale attacks against mega constellations. Starlink, of course, most of your audience will be familiar with that. But the Chinese are working up their own mega constellations of similar size, if I can say that, and we would retaliate. Essentially, the damage would kind of remove low Earth orbit from being a place for science, commerce, communication, whatnot, for a very long time potentially. But that conflict, assuming it's a Taiwan conflict and not a Taiwan conflict that has a related Korea nuclear conflict or a Russian nuclear conflict attached to it, but that conflict would probably carry on to the moon. And the moon is already shaping up to be a theater of not particularly steady security and stability. I mean, not that anybody is arming themselves to militarize the moon or begin conflict, but both China and the United States are deploying potentially dual use systems to the moon that should, let's China most likely want to extend an earthbound conflict to a lunar theater. Those dual use systems could probably be quickly turned around for offensive, defensive purposes. I'll stop there for a second.
Are the policymakers in the U.S. who work on this, who advise Congress, who advise the president, are they clued into the role and the influence of space, or is space sort of an aside over here where Musk plays and maybe, NASA's getting to name their astronauts today and things like that. Are they plugged into what you're talking about?
Well, President Trump is leading American space policy. During his first term, he arrived at some pretty important fundamental decisions. And in his second administration, he is rallying and emphasizing the direction that he began in his first term. Starting with him in particular, I would give him a very high grade. Look, predecessor Barack Obama canceled the Constellation Moon program of George W. Bush. President Obama really didn't offer up anything of substance. He didn't believe that we were in a competition with China. He basically said as much in the speech that he gave canceling Constellation. President Trump comes to office. That's not his understanding. That's not his belief. He, I think, recognized long before he began his first term that we were in a race with the Chinese, that positioning and access to the moon and then Mars and maybe beyond was essential for American security on Earth. So he before the end of his first year in his first term, he revived the American moon program, and it bounced along. But in his second term, I think he understood that, look, I have 4 years to meet my main goal, and I'm going to set that goal. It's going to be putting people back on the moon, bringing us back to a place where we're on the way to a semi-permanent or permanent presence. And I give him enormous credit for having made made that determination and come out and identified this goal, and has made sure that his chosen NASA administrator, Jared Isaacman, is very focused on that goal. So before the end of Trump's second term, he wants Americans back on the moon. That is a big deal, huge deal. Defending access to the moon by establishing a substantial position on the moon is the best non-military way to deter conflict on the moon. And if we can deter conflict on the moon, we have a better chance of securing cislunar space, low Earth orbit, which in turn will help us to deter conflict on Earth. So all of us with children of draft age should be thankful that the space component of possible peace on Earth is at least in hand with this administration. Now, the Chinese they have a vote here, David. They can start a war before the end of Trump's term. If they do that, that will definitely affect our ability to continue with the Artemis moon base program. As Russia's war in Ukraine has decimated the Russian space program and has basically bankrupted its lunar space program. So there is danger, real danger. But I believe Trump is correct to focus on getting back to the moon, building a permanent presence, amassing the technologies and the skills to sustain such a presence, and to by doing so, by building multiple settlements, secure American access for our Artemis partners and whoever else wants to join us in these programs, and by hope and prayer, deter conflict on the moon and prevent that from cascading to our disadvantage in low Earth orbit and then on Earth.
Two quick questions. What are the deficiencies with China that the U.S. should be focusing on exploiting? And then the other one is, what are the technical, realistic capabilities of China? Does it have unlimited energy? I mean, we understand they're building fossil fuel plants and things like that, and solar. Are they also putting up lots and lots of nuclear? And are they going, all crazy in on data centers? Are they planning space-based data centers? Do they have deficiencies, and is energy one of them?
Well, right now, yes. The United States has its hands around the neck of the Straits of Hormuz, and 10 to 15% of China's oil passes through that strait. 10% of it used to come from Iran. So for China, this is now a big deal, a big contest. Unfortunately, China is on Iran's side. China has armed Iran. China's purchases of oil largely fund the terrorist regime there, and has enabled that regime to compile whatever arsenal, missile arsenal, drone arsenal still remains for continuing the war, for continuing its obstinance in negotiations with the Americans to try to end the war. I mean, the war may not end until that regime ends, and unfortunately, that regime may not end until the people of Iran uh, uh, decide to get the guns and start taking over cities and precipitating a domino effect that leads to the end of the regime in Tehran. Uh, but China is also working on other sources of energy, David. Yes, they are now in a boom building nuclear fission power plants. Uh, and China is also working steadily on developing space solar power. In fact, the state media just today has stories about a prototype space energy microwave receiver on Earth that will receive microwave beams, most likely and most importantly, attenuated to pass through the atmosphere with sufficient transmission strength to actually power something on the surface of the planet. So they're very committed to this. It is a huge research and development program for the Chinese. And as of today, according to their social media, their state media, they're actually making progress. And then finally, China has for probably 2 decades been investing in fusion energy and has taken care to participate in the huge American, European, Western tokamak project and has built its own prototypes and hopes to have its own fusion energy capabilities in the not too distant future, which could make it independent from petroleum. So, yeah, the Chinese Communist Party is very serious about energy and is pursuing multiple paths to some of them with greater urgency than is being done in the West and in the United States.
Where are they with data centers and putting them in space?
They will follow the American trend. They have companies that are working on space-based data centers, and they've announced plans to start lofting them in the not too distant future. Uh, uh, there may be plans to loft large numbers of data centers and useful constellations, approaching the Elon Musk ambitions. I'm not so sure, but putting up thousands of them in order to operationalize myriad AI functions on Earth, I would certainly expect that.
Are they
When you mention the idea of a conflict or on the moon, are you seriously saying that the Chinese are likely to engage in some kind of kinetic attack on a moon facility that the United States would put up there to do exploration?
Uh, it is a real possibility.
Hmm.
Starting from the get-go. I mean, the first we'll probably see this in 2027 or 2028 when China starts conducting unmanned landing tests of its Lanyue lunar lander. The Lanyue lunar lander is half of the architecture that will take Chinese to the moon. The other half is the Mengzhou manned space capsule. They will go to the moon on separate Long March 10 space launch vehicles. The Lanyue will go first. It'll be out there for the most of a year circling in a large orbit, waiting for the manned capsule to arrive. But when the Lanyue begins to descend to the moon, it will do so by firing a propulsion stage. The propulsion stage is necessary to keep the Lanyue in lunar orbit. It's also necessary to enable the Lanyue to carry less fuel and land on the moon at a lower weight so that it uses less fuel to get back into orbit. This is the bargain that the Soviets made when they designed their LK moon lander in the 1960s that they never got a chance to use, but the Chinese, believe me, have studied the LK intently. They would have bought one if they could, but I think they've had access to it at various places. They've studied it intently. They did have access to the engines that were developed in Ukraine. So the Lanyue, with its Russian heritage, starts descending to the moon at a point just above the moon. The propulsion stage separates, and then it crashes into the moon. It's a kind of I don't know, a sad arrogance, if you will. I mean, in China, for decades, large toxic rocket first stages have been crashing down on Chinese villages. People die, people are poisoned. It doesn't get into the state media, of course, but it just continues and continues. Every time a big launcher launches out of the Xishan Space Launch Center, it flies over Taiwan. And does Taiwan complain? No. It's probably a good thing because maybe there might be an accident, quote unquote, if they did. But what you'll have from the start of the Chinese manned lunar program is this hazard, if you will, something that should be worked out according to even the Outer Space Treaty. And of course, deconfliction is a major part of the Artemis Accords. Will the Chinese take the initiative in deconflicting their two-stage lunar lander? I'm not sure. Will they be unctuous enough to use the lunar lander in a provocative way, use the propulsion stage to basically to aim it at somebody else's moon base? I'm not sure. It would certainly be assuring if the Chinese could explain how they want to use their lunar lander and how they propose to mitigate or reduce potential hazard from their crashing propulsion stage. But that's just right at the beginning. There is something that could be a threat. Maybe it's not a threat. Maybe it lands closer to the Chinese moon lander. Maybe it's really a threat to the Chinese.
Knock out their own moon base.
But at any rate,
Yeah.
this exists, and it's certainly a reason to approach the Chinese, even offline at the International Astronautical Congress, which happens every year, to try and get some understanding and assurance that at least they know what they're doing. But look, the United States and China plan to put satellite constellations around the moon. These will be for surveillance, communication, navigation. But the combat satellites that are being developed for low Earth orbit could easily be sent to lunar orbit if tensions produce that kind of decision. On the moon, both the United States and China are deploying Hopper drones. These are just small unmanned systems that have a little bit of fuel to hop. The Chinese are going to deploy one this year, the first one later this year on their next Chang'e mission. And the Hopper has already been described as something that's going to be sent into the shaded area of a lunar crater to try to find lunar ice, which, okay, good. We'd like to know if there's lunar ice water too. And hopefully the Chinese will share that information. But a hopper on the moon can perform all of the missions of a UAV or an unmanned combat aerial vehicle on Earth. Could they be so modified? Will they be so modified? Again, that'll depend upon the tensions on Earth that may or may not propel tensions and conflict in space. But the bottom line is that there is something of an equivalence that in my initial analysis will produce a system of early deterrence. I mean, you're not going to want to start a conflict on the moon, because if the other side survives or can send new things to the moon, they're going to come after you. So you don't want your moon base to be messed with. So you don't want to be the first to mess with somebody else's moon base. But as we see on Earth, the Chinese have no problem using their ever larger military to conduct intimidation, to bash Philippine Navy ships in the South China Sea, to fly their Air Force and drive their Navy all around the free country of Taiwan, harass Japan, fund Russia's war in Ukraine, help North Korea become a nuclear missile state, and on and on. So would the Chinese exercise technology options to produce political intimidation beyond our atmosphere? If they're willing to do that in low Earth orbit, then chances would increase that they would be willing to do so in a lunar environment or a Martian environment. Again, provided that the Chinese Communist Party is still in power and sustains its ambitions for ever greater power and control over Earth.
Well, there is the point that we would want to if we get there first in this current race, and we could stake a claim, we'd be in a. I know space tree is technically a claim, but the fact is we had a position there. It would give us an advantage, I think, over the idea of them putting a position first if they got whoever gets the best territory, you might say, whatever point of view.
Well, a Chinese complaint about the Artemis Accords. In fact, before the Artemis Accords were even unveiled publicly, Chinese state media, reflecting both propagandistic and actual security goals for the Chinese, were accusing Artemis of not only continuing the Cold War division, but also advancing the idea of territory on the moon, which is askance the Outer Space Treaty. But Artemis is really all about deconfliction. You have a zone, you have an area, just trying to establish the principle of, okay, respect their position. Don't mess with where they are. Go someplace else.
AJ, you have a question?
Yeah, I have three questions actually. First of all, this Isaacman said about a month ago or something like that China is planning to circumnavigate to go around the moon with astronauts in 2027. Do you feel that is true? That is number one question.
They'll have the capability to do that, yes. So
yeah, they have the capability to do that.
Probably
right?
they probably will try to do that. Yeah, they'll have to.
They will have to. Okay. Number two is that we were talking about nuclear earlier, and China has developed and I guess run a thorium molten salt reactor. I guess it is called TMSR LF1 for last 2 years in Gobi Desert area, one way area. Do you think that China will also go big on thorium, thorium molten salt reactors and do a fair number of them to become more independent, not just simply pressurized water reactors, but also the thorium molten salt reactors? And because they have been successful in doing that and also in fueling while the reactor is running, which we can do with the pressurized water reactors. So that's number two. And number three question is about reusable rockets. So what are the chance potential abilities that China will bring to the table, and how soon do you think that'll happen with reusable rockets,
Okay.
Falcon 9s?
AJ, I have to say I'm not deeply familiar with the types of reactors that
Yeah.
China plans to deploy to the
Mhm.
moon or to power future nuclear powered, either nuclear
No,
thermal.
this is for terrestrial use. This is for terrestrial use. They are
Oh,
doing that for terrestrial use for their own benefit. They're running 2 megawatt plant right now, and they're going to up it to 30 and then to 100 megawatt. That's for terrestrial use for their own people.
okay, yes, all right. Well, I have to plead basic ignorance. I don't know of their plans for using thorium salt reactors versus uh, uh, the more common fission types of reactors.
Mhm.
I just don't know. I can talk about reusable space vehicles though,
Okay.
and I mean China is doing to the reusable SLV market what they've done to electric vehicles. Before that, gasoline vehicles, unmanned systems of all variety, robots of all variety. Uh, uh, there are
Hyper-
basically 20 to 25 Chinese companies, a few that are state owned, the rest
Hmm.
of them, quote unquote, commercial companies, but which operate under the aegis of the same Chinese Communist Party and People's Liberation Army
Mhm.
that controls the state-owned companies. So they're all working for China. They're just funded differently. But there are 20 to 25 wannabe SpaceXs in China, and none of them has achieved a first stage recovery, but that could happen this year and increasingly next year and the following year. Uh, the main company to watch initially is the big state-owned company, China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation.
Hmm.
Their Long March 12 has had a couple of flights. It's a kind of lower payload Falcon 9 kind of rocket, not quite as capable as Falcon 9. But once they get the reusability down, increase the launch cadence, it will be financially attractive. Then there's Long March 10. Long March 10 benefits from the developments in the lunar version. There will be reusable versions of Long March 10. Long
Mhm.
March 10 can take about 26 tons to the moon. I think about 40 tons to low Earth orbit. It could become a workhorse. In fact, one version will be taking the Mengzhou capsule to their space station. Uh, 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 that Long March 10 could become a popular reusable space launch service vehicle. Then CASC is working on their Long March 9, if you will, their Starship. And in the last 3 to 4 days, gray data coming from Chinese social media filtering onto the X platform informs us that construction of Long March 9, the Chinese Starship, will start very soon on Hainan Island, where the major lunar launch facility is located. And that there could potentially be a 3-stage version of Long March 9. Now, I haven't quite figured out what that really means. And there are some doubters that doubt that this is even a real thing. But this is a sort of classic Chinese transparency conundrum. Some data is revealed. The sources of that data may be sketchy, may not be sketchy, but they point towards a result that appears fantastic, but we can't really say for sure. But at any rate, a 3-stage Starship and Long March 9 promises to have something like a 19 or 16 or 19 meter payload fairing, which is huge. A 3-stage Long March 9 would be the heaviest and most powerful space launch vehicle on Earth, if it ever comes into existence. Now, why would the Chinese do that? Well, one early guess on my part is that they want to avoid the complexity of low Earth orbit refueling. Elon Musk's Starship depends on complex and reliable refueling in low Earth orbit in order to accomplish missions such as taking people and cargo to the moon. Perhaps a 3-stage Long March 9 is a way to avoid that complexity. That's just a guess on my part. But for low Earth orbit, a 3-stage Long March 9 could place massive payloads in orbit. This might be the vehicle that takes up large components for just massive solar energy gatherers for compiling solar energy into microwave beams for transmission to the Earth. It could loft as many massive space stations as you want. I mean, you could put cruise ships in low Earth orbit and transport potentially hundreds of people to them on this 3-stage Long March 9. That's just wild speculation. But there we go. That China would not let Starship continue as the most famous mega SLV is understandable, given the mindset and ambitions of the Chinese Communist Party. But is it technically feasible? How many engines would you have to put on that first stage? Do they have plans for engines that are 2, 3, 10 times as powerful as the Raptor engine in order to make this SLV work. All logical questions that of which we will not receive answers for probably a very long time, but it will certainly be a distraction. We'll have to be monitoring these developments, and companies like SpaceX have to take it seriously. Uh, will a mega Long March 9 take away business from Starship? I mean, it's a legitimate concern.
Do you expect the Long March 9 to be reusable or
Yes,
yeah?
yes, that's the plan. The first stage will be reusable. If they go for a three-stager,
Mhm.
you would at least want the second stage to be reusable as well. Uh,
Mhm.
It's higher orbit. It descends into higher reentry temperatures. Uh, we can't know at this point whether the Chinese would want that, or they could make such a large object recoverable. I don't know. It seems like it's feasible. You would have to slow down the second stage so that it's basically dropping vertically,
Mhm.
the Starship first stage, and the Long March 9 first stage, presumably as well. But
Even Starship second stage, the ship also comes down vertically, you know.
yeah,
Mhm.
Rick, is there any credible movement or underground movement in China to rebel against their government?
David, I would say that quite broadly there is a will, but what the Chinese Communist Party excels at is making sure that there's not a way. Um, my my presumption would be that Israel just gave them one of the most profound scares in ever since they have produced the superior digital cage of any country on earth. I mean, China is massively wired with surveillance cameras, internet surveillance, phone surveillance, and it's all run through supercomputers, and then driving demand for the data centers, all to keep track on anybody who may even in the future think to say something or do something that undermines the power of the party. And this 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 power even to predict where a problem person might be is one of the most frightening aspects of China's approach to its digital dictatorship. So if you want to do something about a new era beyond the control of the Chinese Communist Party, you have to basically take on 100 million members. I mean, that's a pretty large number. You have to convince 100 million members that uh, uh, there's a better alternative. Now, the digital dictatorship, as it is, was replicated. I mean, in a simpler, less pervasive way in Iran, and it was all done to assist the Iranian dictatorship to maintain power, to find possible nodes of resistance and snuff them out. But what Israel did was basically take control of the Iranian digital cage, panopticon, and turned it against the regime, used it to find where the leadership was hiding so that it could be decapitated. I mean, I'm sure the Chinese were just scared breathless about watching Israel just take control of the digital surveillance system they built and created and funded and use it to almost take down their client regime. I mean, now that Israel is cooperating more and more with Taiwan, because both Israel and Taiwan are essentially being threatened with their existence by the Chinese Communist Party, I would certainly hope that the Chinese are very afraid of what Taiwan and Israel could possibly do to manipulate the Chinese digital cage against the Chinese Communist Party.
Amazing. AJ?
Yeah, I I have a feeling that probably a lot of people in Taiwan would not want a war with China, would rather join China and become, part of that. Do you have any opinions on that?
Well, AJ, it's my experience, I mean, writing and analyzing
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan for more than 40 years now,
Mm-hmm.
is that most Taiwanese appreciate and welcome the opportunity to make money, to advance their prosperity, participating in business in China. And a significant proportion of the population does that and is happy to profit from that commerce, investment, whatnot. However, having grown up in a free society, having welcomed the benefits of a raucous democracy that allows you to throw out the bums every 4 or 8 years, more than 90% of Taiwanese simply don't want to give that up. The proportion of Taiwanese that would, tomorrow give up their way of life and become slaves to a Chinese communist dictatorship is well south of 10%.
Well, I feel that a lot of the enthusiasm and I guess enthusiasm actually in China, mainly in China, comes from not just the CCP, but CCP is also responsible, but also from national pride in their civilizational and cultural aspects. Wouldn't the Taiwanese feel that also, being Chinese, the Chinese culture, Chinese history, that type of thing, that they're very proud of, and, rightly so, to a large extent. So wouldn't that also, and I think that the CCP is able to control the Chinese population also partly because of that, because they're bringing that pride that existed probably say 2,000, 3,000 years ago, or even 500 years ago, with the navy that they had and all that, that pride that sort of seeps through the space developments, of course, military, but the space accomplishments and all that kind of a thing is what Taiwanese people would also feel that they would like to be part of. Do you
Well,
think?
yes. The party uses appeals to history, appeals to glory extensively in
Yeah.
its overall approach to Taiwan, in its attempts to ingratiate itself with the opposition, the Kuomintang party, and with trying to address current popular support for the Democratic Progressive Party. Yeah, but I mean, Taiwanese are not dummies. Look, the history of China also includes the history of the Mao era, where 50, 70 million people were basically slaughtered. And the Chinese Communist Party says nothing about that period. In fact, there are no memorials. There has been no justice dispensed to even one victim of Mao's mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
50, 70 million people. This is, more murders than any other society in the history of humanity. And yes, Taiwanese are very aware of this, and the Chinese Communist Party's unwillingness, perhaps even inability, to come to terms with this past is very troubling, and certainly serves to counteract whatever positive appeals they may be able to manufacture from China's long and admirable history. But the inability to address the problems is very troubling to Taiwanese, and it undermines overall the appeal of unification for Taiwanese.
Rick, in the 10 minutes or so we have left, what is the capability of other Asian and oceanic countries with space programs, primarily India and Australia, to be a counter-prevailing balance or stoppage, if that's correct grammar, to thwart China, slow China down, something like that?
Well, in unison with the United States and benefiting from membership and then the momentum of the Artemis program, yes, there's definitely the potential to balance the Chinese, to keep them honest and relatively well behaved, and that's a good thing. And as countries like Japan, India, and not too soon afterwards, South Korea, develop heavy space launch vehicles, then their ability to pursue programs in lunar orbit, cislunar space, and even on the moon and Mars that are autonomous from the Artemis Western architecture is greater, and at a minimum, they're able to pursue their programs if necessary, apart from any conflict that happens to occur between China and the United States. So the options for individual programs that are certainly vulnerable to Chinese attack, but certainly allow their leaderships to craft programs that do not crash into the potential for Chinese-American conflict increases with their ability to put their own payloads into space. And that's something that will develop appreciably, I would say, well within the next 2 decades.
AJ, you wanted to say something?
Oh no, I already said no. I don't. If something comes to my mind in last that, well, what I wanted to know, since only 10 minutes left, or less than 10 minutes left now, 5 minutes left. Do you have any comments on the Artemis program as revealed the last reveal on May 26th, with us needing to have at least 70 to 80 launches to take various different cargo to the lunar base, and how we can do that cheaply enough. Any comments on that? What do you think
Well,
of that program, by the way, first of all?
well, the ignition briefing on what is it, March 24, March 23,
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, a tour de force.
Right.
A credit to Jared Isaacman
Yeah.
and all of his assistant administrators. Pulling together such a program was I mean, they there was probably very little sleep for the previous 3 months
Yeah.
in that building. But look, they have laid out a program to build a semi-permanent presence on the moon by 2036. And I mean, I've cited the amount before, but yeah, it's like
It's total of
79
30
space
billion
launches,
dollars. $30 billion total.
yeah, $30 billion,
Yeah.
79 space launches, or
Yeah.
81 space launches, and like
Yeah.
76 lunar landings,
Yeah. Right.
4 habitats, uh, uh, two more than 20 plus moon hoppers, only one pressurized lunar rover, but about 8 or 10 others. I mean, all of this is it's certainly something that we can do, but putting it all together does make it seem fantastical. But this is the way we win the race for the moon, and it is. I mean, I'm certainly grateful that the Trump administration has mobilized NASA in this direction, so that at least in some dimension, the American ability to establish this level of presence is going to help to deter conflict with China. They're definitely going to be playing catch up, and as long as they're playing catch up, they're 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 not going to become aggressive. And if we can take the big step and work toward deconfliction, all the better, and all the more likely that we can deter, prevent conflict on the moon. But I mean, we're in a position in which not too dissimilar from the challenges of arms control and nuclear arms control on Earth. I mean, in order to control and build down, you have to build up. I mean, we didn't reach a level of confidence with the Soviet Union that would allow us to build down until we built up to very high numbers. And so here on the moon, again, a similar dynamic is in play. We need a presence. I mean, we need numbers of things. We need a lot of space launch vehicles. We need a lot of all the systems that are needed to sustain a manned presence on the moon, and the logistical ability to sustain that from this point on, and even to project it to Mars. I mean, the Chinese are definitely set to go to Mars and beyond. In 2023, their main space company, CASC, revealed a 100-year plan to populate the solar system. And that's not just CASC going to Pluto and beyond. That's the Chinese Communist Party.
Rick,
I think to some degree the success of China will be essential in order for us to sustain our own program you're laying out as we go through various election cycles. I mean, Trump would probably push ahead with it, but you have to realize that party things do change, and if there's competition, we'll be in the game. That's what happened with us in the Soviet Union. We won so decisively, we just quit basically for a generation.
Yes, but then space cooperation became a a point of confidence building that sustained itself. And that area of competition, didn't go away, but it was ameliorated. I mean, there were other desires that took the place of extreme weaponization in low Earth orbit. I mean, had the Soviet Union continued, Energia would have been building space bomber bases based on the Mir space station, and that's in their big history book that you once were able to buy by visiting their museum. But uh, it's all picked up now, but the Russians can't afford to follow through. I mean, if the Chinese Communist Party were to evolve, I think we would fall in sort of into the same kind of dimension with China. There would be space cooperation. It would just be a budget battle on Earth. Who's going to pay for it? How much can we afford? Well, if the other guys are going to do that, maybe we should do this. But at least it would be largely cooperative with some aspects of competition, depending upon the resources available.
Rick, as a last question for your opinion, I know this is just an opinion question. Is our extreme domestic partisanship and I'll say really wild kind of behavior toward different points of view and things a threat to achieving what we've been talking about in space? Or are we still going to come together regardless of all this other stuff and make sure space stays strong and carries us forward like we've been talking about and like Isaac wants to happen for the next 20 years or whatever? Or are we going to shoot ourselves in the feet? What's your opinion?
Well, David, I think the Artemis program will continue regardless of the party in power. A Democrat administration may not be funding it as vigorously as a Republican administration, but it will continue. I think it's a matter of pride. It's also a matter of strategic position within the Earth-Moon system, and soon the Earth-Moon-Mars system. I don't think any future administration can afford to do what Barack Obama did in 2010. I think it will continue. President Trump is very wise to have directed NASA to design and configure the current to 3036 program. Certainly there could be attempts to cut it back, but in the main, I think it's going to continue. I would be the only thing that would really knock it off schedule would be some kind of conflagration on Earth, where we absolutely just couldn't afford to spend money in that direction. And that's always possible, but as long as other aspects of our defense establishment do their job, we may muddle through.
Anybody have a closing comment for Rick? Otherwise, Rick, I want to thank you for returning back to the space show and sharing your thoughts and wisdom and expertise with us. lots to think about. And I appreciate it and look forward to the next time we get together, either on Hotel Mars or on the space show or both. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, David, for having me back.
John,
Thank you, Rick.
AJ, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Our next live show, everybody, is Friday. And we're going to be talking about Explore Mars with Chris, who's an Explore Mars person, Chris Carberry. And then we have guest on Peruvian satellite systems in industry, along with Manuel Cuba, our friend from Luxembourg, on Sunday. So hope everyone can join us. Rick, thank you again, and keep looking up, everybody. And I look forward to our next discussion. Good night, everyone from the space show.
Thank you.